Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Tribe of Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Emi Kirshner. And on today's podcast, we have Jena Rodriguez of Brave Masters. I've known Jena for a couple of years, and it was really cool to sit down and reconnect with her because she shared a part of her backstory that I haven't heard before. And, she talks about how some of the things that happened early on when she was growing her first business really forced her to step into making decisions and then really going after everything that she needed to do to make those decisions work. She also shares the one thing that if you want to be more visible, you need to do. So you definitely listen in. And if you find that this is really valuable and it resonates for you, please leave a review and share with your friends. My name is Emi Kirshner. I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor. The one thing that I get asked all the time is, how do you achieve success in business and make an impact? In each episode of the Tribe of Leaders podcast, you'll hear from entrepreneurs and visionaries who share how their leadership has changed not only their lives, but the lives of everybody around them. Hey, everybody. Emi Kirshner here. And Jena, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you here. We've known each other for, I don't know how many years now, but we were just kind of talking before we started recording. And I love just hanging out with you. And I think everybody that's listening is going to love what we have to talk about because I think it's so important, particularly as being a leader. Before we dive into that, though, share with everybody a little bit about who you are for those people who don't know you and your backstory, because you have a really cool story about how you've kind of just become and grown into being a Brave Master.
Yeah, thank you. I love hanging out with you too. So thank you. I'm like, we could talk offline and online, that's for sure. So just briefly, I'm a business and brave strategist. I believe brave is all about just facing yourself and really being willing to be uncomfortable. So I help people do that. And I'm committed to helping entrepreneurs that are looking to speak up and scale their passion-focused businesses, kind of move through the fears, overcome them, and ultimately unpack their natural gifts and monetize, right? I'm all about monetization, profit enhancement, et cetera, because I used to be a controller, which kind of leads me into my story. And that is, I was in corporate America and I actually rose to leadership, if you want to call it, very early on. And I think I saw this pattern for myself. Even in my teens, I started college at 16. So I'm hanging out with 20-year-olds and still rising and, to the occasion. But then even in my 20s, I started a computer consulting firm and I just came in as an accounting assistant. And then within 6 months, they're rising me to management and controller. I was like 24 and I was like, really? You're going to put me in that position? And I'm like, this other woman's been here for years, right? And so they're like, no, but you're the leader. And so I wanted to share that because I think there's sometimes, yes, I had the kind of characteristics for it, but I also think it's something you can learn. I think it's something you can step into. And I, like you and I shared, I believe we all have leadership inside of us and it's how you foster it. So I started fostering it. And then I moved to another company and I was a controller consultant. So I was consulting entrepreneurs and business owners. But I was reaching this point where I was capping out. I was like, I want something on my own. I want something bigger. I have these dreams and visions and they're just paying me what they think I'm worth, right? Not me, really stepping into what I think I'm worth, right? Mm-hmm. So I came upon a business for sale in 2006 and I followed the breadcrumbs and I figured out, I can actually buy this thing, and it was a process of figuring that out. But ultimately I bought it. I bought the storefront and a boutique. And I was like all excited because I was like, I have a fashion background and a makeup artistry background and the controller and all these things. I was like, great, I can pull all this together. Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm one of those weird ones with the half creative.
I'm thinking it's like controller art. Like, yes. How did you blend that together?
It really came, it was I mean, honestly, I was crazy confused in college. I was like, what major should I have? And the truth is my mom was an artist and my dad was a computer programmer. So I guess that's where it came from, right?
A bit of accounting.
Yeah. And so that logic. numbers came easy and art came easy. Even the art behind me is my work. So yeah, it's like, that just was part of who I am, even though I was confused, like, what am I supposed to do with this? Now it pays off. Now it really helps people. But at the time, that was kind of what I was up against, is I wasn't tapping into the creativity in the numbers game. The numbers came easy, leadership came easy, management came easy. Those kind of things were coming into my world, but I was missing the creative spark. And so when I bought this storefront, it brought all that together. It was, I could do the brand and the marketing and the, accounting, but I could also help women with fashion and makeup and all these things that I had passions for as well. So I'm very multi-passionate. Fast forward, I get into the store, we make $300,000 in the first year, and I'm sitting there at that end of that year, and I can't pay my rent. I can't pay my people, and cash is bleeding. So in a store, you have to obviously invest a lot in inventory before you ever sell it. And there's a lot of overhead. So I knew what I knew, but I also didn't know what I didn't know. And that's, I think, what happens. That's why, mentorship in my world is so important. So I found myself in this predicament where I'm like, what do I do? I'm tapped out. Like, I've used all my credit. I've gotten all the loans I can get, and I just didn't have a whole lot of options. And so I found myself in front of a bankruptcy attorney to figure out what are my options to be protected. Because the most important thing at that moment was my 2-year-old, my 7-year-old stepdaughter, my husband, my house, my dogs, that's all that mattered to me in the moment. I was so stressed, if you can imagine. Trying to pay people. Yeah, it was scary. And she just said, you have 2 options. She's like, you do qualify, because you do have, for anybody listening, you actually have to qualify for bankruptcy.
To be bankrupt.
Yeah, it's just not like sign me up. It's whatever your state requirements are. And the irony is that I was always afraid of it. My mother went through 2 of them. One, when my parents divorced. So at 8 years old, I thought it was a bad thing. I thought it was bad. I thought it ruined your life, right? Because it shifted our world. Like, it all, the divorce and everything that happened, and then a bankruptcy wrapped into it. An 8-year-old's looking at that going, this is not good, So I had to come to terms with and also face the fact that I had created this. Like, this is in my world now. I took the risk, but I also took the risk, right? So I filed bankruptcy because that was the only way for me to close the store and get out of it. And it was $700,000 in debt, like on the liability side, which is backwards, right? It's not a good thing. It's hard to get out of, right? So fast forward, I had a choice at that point. And I think this speaks to leadership of your own life and of your choices and of your, I wasn't being in victim. I think that's key to leadership, is it's not about victim. It was about, okay, this is what I did. This is what happened. And now what? And what am I going to do about it? So the next day I literally made a decision. I can go back to work, go find a job, or I can stick it out and figure out, how am I going to work for myself? How are we going to make a living? And my husband was at the time running a web design company, and he's also a musician, and he still is. That's what he does full time now. And I looked at it and I said, well, I could probably, I know marketing, I know design, I can do, creatively, but you put websites together. I don't do that. But I said, why don't you just tell me what HTML stands for and I'll go sell it. So that's what we did. We partnered up for 5 years and turned the boat around, and we survived it. We moved through it, that hardship, and we were cash basis. It's like when you're bankrupt, you don't have credit. So it's like everything was cash basis. So I was very much about hitting the pavement. And so I started networking. That's what I was like, I just got to get out. Like, I don't have money to spend on Facebook ads. I don't even know they existed back then. But it was time for me to just get visible and show up and say, I'm for hire, right? And so I hit the pavement. I got myself out there, and even as uncomfortable as that was, and started networking and being seen. And we did quadruple the business, but what that meant is it hit right under that 6-figure mark, right under $100,000 a year. And that's 2 incomes, right? My husband and I together. And so it was still a struggle. It was still, hard it's not much money in this world, anymore. And what shifted for me ultimately is I made another really brave decision. And it was, I saw that we as partners weren't really going down the same road anymore. My husband and I, he really wanted to go back to music full time, and I wanted to go into strategy, brand strategy, and take my business a different direction, and really didn't want to do websites. Number one, I don't build them. So if he goes away, if he doesn't do it anymore, then that will go away as well. And so I had to have a, hard conversation with him December of 2012. And I was done. I was done doing it the way we were doing it. He wouldn't call it, so I had to call it. And I basically said, I'm going to take over the business January 1st, 2013. And that just means that you're free. You're free to go do music full time. And I'm going to go do it the way I know I can grow this thing. And I did have a business coach at the time, and she watched me struggle with this decision for a good year. But she said, I know you can do this, on your own, if you want to, and you want to start coaching people and you want to start speaking, and which I was also terrified of, but I knew it worked for people. So I was like, I think this is my next level. And so all inside of this, I think leadership, because I know that's our conversation today, is about, and which leads, I think it's part of Brave, right? Being a Brave Master is leading, is being able to make the hard decisions, is being able to pivot, being able to be truthful with yourself, and then step into it, right? Lean into that leadership. And so here we are almost 6 years later. I made that decision. My husband and I are still together 18 years. We almost lost it at that moment. We almost lost our marriage, but we came back together. And he's thriving as a musician, and I'm doing my thing. And now we're, multi 6-figure business and beyond, that's what we're growing. So it's all about, now I've obviously rebranded again to Brave Masters, and it's all about really helping people speak up and scale and lead inside their own business at a whole different level than where I was. So it's completely possible if I can come through all that.
I have so many questions for you too, because I don't think I've heard the first part of your story before. So thank you so much for sharing it. And
you're welcome.
After the bankruptcy too, because I think it's really easy to stay in the same pattern.
Absolutely.
And did you have like a heart to heart with yourself, or an aha moment, or something where it's like, I have to do something differently because this didn't work.
That didn't work.
Yeah. And it's just that it just didn't work because, the sky was blue or whatever. Like I played a part.
Yeah, because, it's true, because there's a fine line between, just in life in general, blaming the circumstances, blaming the economy, because there was a truth to that. It was 2007 going to 2008, and nine places around me in the square closed. Right. So that also impacted the foot traffic. Right. Like it was there, but I never really said, well, that's why. Right. Like, it played factors, but bottom line is, there's also businesses that survived that. And it's because they knew more than I knew. That's all. Right. There was something they knew, that they knew how to pivot or restructure or re-strategize, or, whatever it was, or they had capital and they could, ride the wave, so there's all kinds of things that could have occurred. But what I did well, I suppose, is I took responsibility for it. I actually, when I started laughing after I got out of the bankruptcy attorney appointment, because I was like, of course, this is one of my biggest fears that has run my life, right? Fears can come true if you let them manifest. So I started laughing at myself. I'm like, of course this is my lesson. Of course this is in my life. Meaning, yay, celebrate it, right? Celebrate the fact that now I get to know what it looks like when I have to make this hard decision. And it was a business. It was a risk I took, all of those things. But bottom line is, it was in my life for a reason. And it absolutely has served me to where I am today. Right. And I think that was the conversation I was having. It was hard. I'm not saying I didn't have some tears. I'm not saying that I didn't have some, moments of woe is me. But I think what my pattern really is I don't dwell on it too long. I, pick myself back up and keep moving. And I do believe an action annihilates fear, right? If you stay in action, you can't hang out with the fear very long, or the upset, or the, woe is me. And I'll tell you, the next day, I mean, I went into action. I was like, okay, we have to figure this out. We have like $10,000 to our name. That's it, because that was all that was left from everything, from the store. And I had to pay the bankruptcy attorney out of that, like this is it. There's no cash flow coming. So we have to figure out what's cash flow. And I actually got my brave on and called my ex-boss. And I mean, who does that? Because I was all really excited when I left him, left the company. Right. And I called him back and I said, listen, all right, so this thing didn't work. I had to close the store and the business. I said, however, I'm just calling to see if I could get some contract work that, my work as an outsourced controller. I don't want to be an employee, but I'm just curious if you have any contracts that you guys can't handle or whatever. So it was a very gutsy move for me to just ask. Sometimes in survival mode, you just figure it out, right? You ask and you get your brave on. I call it brave by survival. It's kind of like, I just got to pick up the phone. And when I did, he actually, he was like, I'm sorry that didn't work. He's like, but good for you for, giving a shot. And he said, we're actually not hiring, but I do actually have 2 clients that I think would be perfect for you that we're not taking on. And I'm like, okay. And so I did some contract work to make sure the mortgage was paid. And then I went and started networking and building the web design business. And so inside of all that, it's like, there's a sense of, if you stay in victim, if you stay in like, oh my God, why is this happening to me? You're not going to see the answers. You're not going to be able to see the options. I mean, I immediately got into action and saw I have an option to call the boss. I can call him and see what's possible. And I think that's really the leadership of your life, is being able to take the circumstance, okay, accept it for what it is, take ownership, and then be able to turn around and go, what's possible and what can I learn from this? What can I do about it? And what can I do next? And that's what I did. And I pretty much followed that pattern no matter what happens in my life, and that's what I really went through at that time.
I think that's so amazing too, because that's, for me, one of the biggest pieces is just going and taking the action and yes, being so uncomfortable. That takes huge amounts of brave, courage, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And because it's hard to hear that potential no. And I think it translates into a lot of entrepreneurs being afraid to, ask for the sale.
Correct. Totally.
Yeah.
Or ask for the speaking gig, obviously help a lot of people get out there and start speaking for their business, and, they're hesitant. And it was funny. I call them truth moments. So I put these quotes together and I email them to my list. And today's quote today was, all you need is 10 seconds of insane brave. That's all you need.
I love
Count to 10, right? Count to 10, pick up the phone, count to 10, send the email, count to 10, and just do it. I felt that actually physically when I ziplined for the first time. I was literally climbing the ladder going, don't think, just do. Don't think, just do. Count to 10, just jump,
Past the throat point and just do it because you're going to have so much fun.
Yeah, and it was amazing. I did it 3 times, but I had 10 seconds of brave every time. So 10 seconds of insane brave. That's all.
Yeah, so in talking about being brave and really that 10 seconds of brave and just doing it, that leads into being visible more too, because you're showing up differently, right?
Right.
But you also talk about visibility and vulnerability in business.
Yeah.
So, why do you think that's so important? What is it about being, I'm going to say V squared here.
That's good. I love that.
It'll be my soundbite moment. Being visible and vulnerable, because at that point that you're leaping off the zip line, right? There's some vulnerability there.
Oh yeah. 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 My fears, my doubts, all things are showing, that's who I am in the moment. So for me, the visibility, my story even unfolds that way, because initially I'd made a decision called, all right, I need to get highly visible. I need to speak. I need to, show up as the leader of my business, as the expert that I've been and am, right? And so when I made that decision, I jumped into it and I just figured it out as I went along, and I screwed it up many times, but I just did it anyway. But there was a moment where, so here's the truth. I never spoke of the bankruptcy for 6 years out publicly.
I get it.
I wouldn't really talk about it. And so there was some shame. There was some, and it was more like I was just making it mean something. I made it mean something at 8, you know? And so although I knew it was just part of what I had to go through, it's almost, and then I turned it around and was like, well, what if people knew that I did that? Would they trust me to build their business? You know, like I made all kinds of stuff up about it. And so it took a stage, and someone asked me a question. And for the first time, I got really honest in front of like 50 strangers. And I mentioned the bankruptcy, and I just owned it. And it was emotional, and it was honest, and it was real in the moment when I shared the story. And the beautiful thing is in that moment, yes, I felt extremely exposed. Like, holy cow, what did I just do? And the second I got off the stage, like many people walked up to me, and one very particular woman who we're still friends now, she walked up to me crying and like tearful and grabbed my arms. And she's like, oh my gosh, you're me. And she's like, you're telling my story. You're telling, you know, like, thank you for saying this. I don't feel so alone. And I was like, and I can cry right now because I can still go back to that moment.
Yeah.
When she shared that. And I just went, oh, that's why you do it. Is because you connect with the human part of all of us. And then you change someone's life because they don't feel alone anymore. And I mean, I just went like, holy cow, what have I been waiting for? Right. And so since that moment, I get my vulnerability on all the time. I mean, this is as vulnerable as I can be as well. Right. This conversation. And I really am at a point you can ask me anything, you know?
Well, and thank you for that. I'm really grateful that you are sharing. And I've had similar experiences. Like I never talked about my divorce or the like epiphany that I had about myself after I was divorced. And I finally started talking about it in a lot of my talks, and people relate to it.
Yeah.
And it gives them a space to rise up too. So I think that's,
there's a relatability inside the V squared, right?
We're all going through something, and it's just So I think everybody needs to hear that we have all experienced,
human,
a thing,
human, for sure. So and I think there's still judgment in the world. There's still a lot of judgment. And I think the more we are honest and open and real and human, it breaks down those walls. It levels us out, right? You know, like I'm sure people are like, well, you have it all figured out and you've got this great this and great that. And I'm like, guys, like, let me just say, you know, like I don't have it. I take credit for the things I've created because I take ownership of my life. But I also am very real and honest about like how I had to go through things and how I had to face myself, and the leader I had to become in order to create it. But that doesn't, if I can do it, that means you can do it too. Like that's the story, right? So the more we open up, and I was, as a young person, a teenager, and we were just talking about this before, I was, very shy, very reserved, and I got bullied by especially females, girls, and it was because they were jealous. They didn't understand me. They didn't even get to know me. And so they made a lot of assumptions about my life and about who I am. And they had not the first clue of what I've been through. They didn't know that I just spent 5 years in a domestic violence household. They didn't know that I was shut down for a reason, meaning I was protecting myself. And instead they just want to, scrape bitch on my locker, right? Like, really? I'm a bitch because I don't speak up, but it's judgment. It's, and of course, forgiveness totally, because they just didn't know better.
Kids. Well, and it's really about them and whatever's going on for them too.
Yes.
So it's
their insecurities.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's both of those pieces kind of coming in together, and that creates such a powerful upset.
Yeah.
All the way
around. And it is, I call it our egos. Our egos are dancing, right? We all have our less than higher selves, less than inspired selves, and I always, and now as a more self-aware, I'm very, personal development, transformational work is a part of my life and a part of what I help people in. And, the more self-aware I become, the more vulnerable I've been able to be. I think that's part of leadership as well, leading your own, kind of self growth and personal development. And because I can be in that space and because I can look back and understand human behavior, and even today, it's not a teenage thing, although it's heavy in teenage world because they're less understanding, they're less self-aware. I can see it in the adult world. I can see it online, there's still a lot of misunderstandings and, hate and divide and all of that. And I just think it's, the more we really step into our personal leadership and our personal development, the more we can make the ripple effect that will start to change the world at large. But it takes one. We have to start with ourselves. Yeah. And I think that's the ultimate in brave mastery, is facing oneself, is being able to actually look in the mirror.
Okay. So is that, we had talked earlier too, like what's the one thing that entrepreneurs can do to make a quantum leap in their business? Is that it, or is there more?
Well, there's business strategies, and then I have self strategies, right? I do believe that, something obviously I strategize in business and marketing around is getting visible, speaking up. And it totally changed my business. And inside of that, speaking and getting public and speaking about your expertise, all of that strategy, I do believe catapults businesses very quickly. I also know that the other side of that is you have to deal with you. So the faster you're willing to own your stuff and look at you, then obviously even just getting on a stage and being vulnerable and being willing to really own the stage, it goes hand in hand. So it's kind of twofold, I guess, in this conversation for sure.
Well, I think as you're handling your stuff, and really working through all of those triggers and the things that hold you back and keep you from stepping into being brave and more visible too, you show up differently on a stage.
Oh, totally. Yeah, they get you. They get you. They get to receive who you really are instead of the thing you want everybody to think you are, or the facade, or the presentation. For me, speaking is not, it doesn't mean that you don't have a guideline or, I actually have a structure that I teach people about, how to monetize your speaking and how to move people to emotional decisions, right? Or just even resonate with you. However, I believe that speaking is a co-creation with your audience. I think it's about you showing up and then they showing up and then you're meeting together in that space. And so if we can be prepared, but in a more loose manner, right? Like, here's the points I want to make, but here's the beautiful thing. Sometimes I never get to the point. And yet I believe that can be perfect too, right? So I don't want to show up with a script. I want to show up with Jena. And ironically, I do some motivational speaking now as well, not just speaking for the sake of my business, which that's what I teach a lot of. I just spoke this week and I had an outline. I just had these are the 5 lessons I've learned, and it was a total opportunity to completely be vulnerable and tell my entire story and all of that. And someone walked up to me and said, I just want to thank you for not being scripted, and you just really shared from your heart. And I'm like, yay, because that's all I was doing. I don't even remember what I really said, and when I can't remember, that means I was just being in the moment and letting it come through me. Yeah. And being honest,
I think those are the most powerful.
Yeah. I think that's when the V squared really comes together. I love that. I'm going to have to borrow it. I'll give you credit, but I have to borrow that.
Go right ahead. They just fall out of my mouth.
I love it. It's beautiful.
Excuse me. What are some tips you would give to somebody who wants to be more visible, but they haven't quite got their brave on?
Yeah. First step is you got to make a decision. You have to make the decision, because I say, there's number one, there's 4 steps to being brave about anything, especially about speaking and getting visible. First, you have to notice and recognize the spark of curiosity, the spark of inspiration, that moment where you're like, I wonder if I should speak, or I wonder if I should get out there more, or I know I should get out there more. Yeah. Right. We all have them. They're real quiet. You have to be able to listen and hear them. So when you hear that, then you want to follow the follow forward, right? Move forward. And so number 2 is you got to get off the fence. You have to make a decision. You have to be clear, like, yes, I'm a speaker. Declaration. And this is exactly what I did. 2012, I saw the spark and I was like, I really need to do this. Like the knowingness was there. And then 2013, I take over the business and change the course so I can now speak about my topic, but I made a declaration. And so when you do that, then the next step is you got to commit to it every day. Like commit to the actions, commit to the thoughts, commit to the, beingness of whatever you decided, and then ultimately take massive action, right? Do something about it. And so I think sometimes people are trying to take action and they're trying to figure out how to do it before they've actually made a decision. And so then you just paralyze, you just stay stuck. You never move forward. And then you make all the reasons why not, like it's a mind game at that point. So I made a decision. I'm a speaker. I started declaring I'm a speaker through the commitment and action by saying it in my intro, by showing up at a network meeting or an event and introducing myself that way. And that is how I got my first gig. Somebody heard me say it. I hadn't spoken before, but they heard me say it. And they're like, oh, I have a cancellation in 2 months. Will you be my speaker? And I'm like, oh, say yes, just say yes. I'm like telling myself in my head, just say yes. And I did. And that started the process. So hopefully that captures 2 things. 1, the mindset part of it. Number 2, once you have the opportunities, you've got to say yes, pull the Band-Aid off, and then start to figure out the how, or ask who can help me figure out the how, clearly, right? So
I love that. So succinct, but I think so accurate in how to take some action and really get it out there and go make it happen.
Yeah.
I think
if you want one thing as far as visible and speaking gigs, and obviously the first step, the first how is get the gig, put the gig on the calendar. And people are like, well, I don't have a talk. I don't know what I'm going to say. I'm like, that doesn't matter.
People think they have to figure it all out. And while you might want to have like some topics that you speak on
have a clue of what you'll talk about. Yeah.
You don't have to have the talk figured out or scripted out or what your key points are going to be. Or anything. And I think that goes across like all aspects of business. Just go do it.
Yeah.
And then you'll figure out the rest of it.
Yeah. You'll figure it out. You'll try things on. You'll test things out. It works or doesn't work. You pivot, you move, but you're moving and you're learning through the movement. Like, so it's kind of like we don't know how our body's going to move if we're like doing yoga until we actually put ourselves in a yoga position, right? Or something like that. And I'm a newbie. Don't take that wrong. I am not an expert in yoga, but I have done it and I was uncomfortable because I'd never done it before. And it was like, but until I tried the pose or, put my body in that position, I don't know if my body can do it. I don't know if it's going to work. It may be painful. I mean, all those things, but it's like, you got to just commit. You have to say, yes to it and then commit to it. And that's why I have an online course about speaking, right? The Brave Speaker. And that's the second module. And people are always like, why is this first? Why are we getting the gig first? And the truth is because it will create the pressure. It will create the commitment for you because it'll be on the calendar. And then you have to move into it, right? So there's a method to my madness.
So if somebody wanted to get a little more information about getting their Brave on, etc., you have a really cool training program, right? That you're gifting everybody.
Yeah. For sure. Thank you. It definitely will dive deeper into this. It'll tell you a little bit more about my story about speaking and getting visible and, the rewards of saying yes. And you can find that at bravemasters.com/free webinar. It'll redirect. You can just log in. It's just value add. There's no selling. It's just like an hour-long webinar training. And it will help you really connect to not only the belief in you that you can do it too, or if you're already doing it, like what do you need to do to up-level it, right? Because there is a way to monetize it. There is a way to do this for the sake of your business and the growth of your business. And so, that's probably a great place to start.
Yeah. And the link will be in the show notes too, everybody. So
thank you.
Why don't you say the link again?
Yeah. bravemasters.com/free webinar.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. I think it'll be a great experience for those of you who, really want to get into speaking and being more visible.
Yeah. It's time.
Little frog now. Yeah. But thank you so much for being on. Share where everybody can connect with you too.
Yes, for sure. My website has a little bit of everything, right? Social media links and all. bravemasters.com. It also has access to my podcast show, so you can get more inspiration around being brave. And I'm actually doing some brave speaking training through my podcast and videos on Facebook, etc. So there's tons of resource and ways to get to know me and know my community, etc. So
thank you. And thank you so much for coming on today. I love hanging out with you, as I said. And
me too.
I think just hearing your story is going to inspire so many people.
I appreciate it. I always love hanging out with you too. And I'm just really grateful for the opportunity. So yay. Thank you.
And everybody, we will see you next week. Have a good one.
Have you ever thought about those times when if you had just known that one thing, it would have saved you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, or maybe days, weeks, or even months of your time? I've created the Tribe of Leaders membership community for exactly that reason, to give you the tools, the resources, and the support to make growing your business a snap. As a member, you'll have access to video training, live monthly training and masterminds, and special co-working days that will help you run your business like the CEO that you are. You can get all the details at thetribeofleaders.com. See you there.